passage of time, we have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
This meeting of the Starkville Board of Alderman will now come to order. Please rise for the saying of a Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you have before you a copy of the written agenda. Are there any proposed revisions to the agenda as written?
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized, please?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, I want to add one item under board business, Roman numeral 10. We'll insert it in as paragraph B, and that would be for the Chief Administrative Officer to give a report on the timeline of street overlay and road construction within the city.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Perkins is to add an item B under Roman numeral 10, board business, to be a report from Chief Administrative Officer Lynn Spruill on the status of road construction projects. Alderman Perkins,
Including street overlay, that's pretty close. But
including
that's
street
fine.
overlay.
Yes, sir.
Is there any objection to that proposed revision? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change. Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed
No,
revision?
sir, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Dennis.
I'd like to place some items on consent. Under Department Business, item B, Building Codes and Planning Department, item 1, to consent with the 4 conditions as presented.
All right, the proposed revision is to place item 11B1, which is the consideration of the approval of P&Z item number CU 11-05 on the consent agenda with the 11 conditions as proposed.
4 conditions.
Oh, excuse me, with the 4 conditions as proposed by staff.
By P&Z.
Oh, as before. All right, now place the approval of P&Z item number CU 11-05 with 4 conditions as proposed by the P&Z Commission on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I do. Under Personnel, item 1 to consent.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to place item 11I1 on page 4, the request for advertisement to fill vacant positions of police officers due to resignations as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revision?
Under Personnel, item 2.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to place item 11I2, the request for advertisement to fill vacant position of Operator 1 in Drinking Water Division of the Public Services Department due to resignation as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
Under Personnel, item 3 to consent.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to place the request for approval of a job description and advertisement to fill the position of office manager in the Building Codes and Planning Department due to retirement as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revision?
Under Personnel, item 4 with the 4 subsequent positions to consent.
All right, let's take those one at a time. You don't think so? Okay.
Subparts A through D.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11I4 with its 4 subparts, which is the request for approval of hiring to fill vacant positions in the Sanitation and Environmental Services Division. Those positions, as outlined in parts A, B, C, and D, are the transfer of Robert Barnes to the position of equipment operator in the landfill division, the approval of hiring Bobby Jordan to fill the position of maintenance worker 1 in the landscaping division, and the approval of hiring Thalamus Morgan to the position of operator 1 in the landscaping division, and the approval of hiring a temporary employee to fill the position of driver in the sanitation division due to employee medical absence on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
All right, is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have any further proposed revisions?
I have no further revisions.
All right, are there any further proposed revisions from the members of the board? Any further proposed revisions?
I only had one question, if I could ask for Chief Lindley on this interlocal agreement between us and Clay County. Is this the same deal? Is this the same agreement we've had year to year?
Basically the same as always, it just goes from the private contractor to Clay County.
Okay.
On that same subject, Chief, I saw where the transport firm is will no longer transport inmates.
So that's the same firm, private company that the housing and transport.
So that will be in
So that puts us back in the transport business.
transport business. That's what I was asking about.
More fuel, more overtime, all of it.
And you feel comfortable being able to absorb that?
You have a choice.
Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Are there any further proposed revisions from the members of the board? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Alderman Corey to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second? Second. Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter for your consideration is the approval of the consent agenda as revised. Is there any objection to the approval of the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised is approved. And you now have before you a copy of the minutes from June 7, 2011 for your consideration. Discussion.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of the minutes from the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville held on June 7, 2011. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Dumas' motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that will carry us to comments by the mayor and the board. And I have a few comments tonight. First, I would like to indulge in a little victory lap. The board and I went down to the Gulf Coast last week for our annual Municipal League Conference, where city leaders from all of the cities throughout the state of Mississippi are present once a year. And the most anticipated announcement of that conference for the last couple of years has been the winners of the Healthy Hometown competition. As many of you know, for the last 2 years, we've put together an application, and we were very disappointed last year when we were not selected as one of the healthy hometowns in the state of Mississippi, in spite of the fact that we thought we had an excellent application. We went to the conference this year, and we were awarded the overall award of the healthiest hometown in the state of Mississippi. With an overall grand prize of $50,000 to continue to improve the public health of this community. And I must say, a special thanks to the members of the board, particularly Alderman Vaughn, who has been the board representative to the Healthy Hometown Committee, and to the members of the Healthy Hometown Committee at large. who has worked tirelessly for 2 years now, putting together not only the application, but a plan for improving the overall health of this community. It was quite a day to be proud as a citizen of Starkville. I would like to remind everybody that we have a very important town hall meeting next Tuesday night to unveil a preliminary concept on the municipal complex. We encourage members of the public to please make every effort to attend this meeting as it concerns a very important topic related to the future of this city. That will be in this courtroom next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. That's July 12th. Please make every effort to attend. And finally, I'd like to remind the board members that if possible, we need to get your capital improvement plan project list in by this Friday. Demery Grubbs, who is also assisting us on the municipal complex, is going to be back in town for that town hall meeting on the 12th, and I would like to get him as much information in advance of that trip back as possible. So please make every effort to do that.
Do you have that electronic?
I can get it. I don't
Could
have
you
it.
email us a copy so I can work off the email?
Yeah. Okay. Now I'd like to introduce the newest employees in the city workforce. And first, it is my pleasure to introduce somebody that I work with on a daily basis, the new assistant to the mayor and board of aldermen, Shantea Wilson. And the city would like to introduce Shantea Wilson as the new administrative assistant to the mayor and board of aldermen. She is originally from Crawford, Mississippi, and attended West Lowndes High School. She is a graduate of Mississippi University for Women with a degree in Management Information Systems. Shantea also attended several other schools, including Rust College, the University of Michigan, Ashford University, and Colorado Technical University. Previously, Shantea worked for Prairie Opportunity as a caseworker program specialist. Shantea attends Charity Mission Fairview Full Gospel Baptist Church in Crawford, where she enjoys mentoring the children, or where she enjoys mentoring the church youth group. She also enjoys reading, but her favorite hobby is singing. I didn't know that. If you are wondering about the origin of Shantea's name, it is derived from the French word chateau. Please join me in welcoming Shantea Wilson as the newest employee.
Yeah, that's right. Take a picture. Yeah, you want me to? I'll tell you to. You take a picture. You the mayor? No, I don't. You take a picture. Not with the new employee.
I can't believe you haven't beat about 50 people in the population. I can't believe it. Section of census. Sensation. Yeah, 5,000. Film procession.
Now I'd like to introduce Mark Clay. Mark is a new lab technician for the wastewater treatment plant. He is originally from Columbus, Mississippi, and attended Caldwell High School. He is a graduate of Millsaps College with a Bachelor's of Science degree in chemistry. Before joining the city of Starkville, Mark taught science at Columbus High School. His work experience includes 13 years at Mississippi Chemical Corporation as an analytical chemist, 17 years at Tronox LLC in positions of senior control chemist and manager of product quality control, and 2 years at Geocycle as their analytical chemist. Mark and his wife Sharon have 3 sons, Jeremy, Adam, and Jonathan. He and his family attend St. Paul Episcopal Church. During his spare time, Mark enjoys camping, reading, and spending time with his 2 granddaughters. Years ago, Mark experienced a life-changing situation. He had the pleasure of delivering his middle son while on the way to the hospital. Please join me in welcoming Mark to the city of Starkville. That concludes my comments, and we have one scheduled comment from the members of the board tonight. That is the presentation of the Employee of the Month from Alderman Vaughn.
First of all, before I go there, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Chief and Police Chief and thank Captain Nicholas and Sergeant Michael Elvis for intercepting a funeral procession coming from Jackson on Saturday. I'd like to thank y'all for that, Chief. But introducing the Employee of the Month, City of Starkville Employee of the Month, June 11th. It is a great pleasure that I introduce that person that is for the City of Starkville Employee of the Month for June 2011. She is the Secretary for the Sanitation and Environment Service. The department also provides support service for the Street Department, as we have expanded the Sanitation Department to include landscaping, landfill, and rubbish, and recycling. She has picked up these additional areas of responsibility, handling the support and service for all of these areas. She takes the initiative to get things done without being asked, and is also able to get the job done with minimum supervision. She takes a very active role with the recycling program and the recycling committee. Recently, she has been trained a part-time employee for experience work and has helped this individual learn how to use a computer, answer phone, and take messages correctly. She lived in Starkville area for 20 years. She completed her bachelor's degree in 1997, majoring in office system technology. She later went on to get a master's degree online in management and supervision. She and her husband, Dennis, have 6 children and 7 grandchildren. She started working for the sanitation department as a part-time employee and was later hired as a full-time employee. She has been with this department for 3 years and a half. We thank you for all that you have done for the city of Starkville. The person that was chosen for the Employee of the Month is none other than Ms. Carol Joy. Let's give her a hand.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board?
Mr. Mayor, very brief, this is appropriate time, just very good housekeeping matter. We're looking forward to Ms. Spruill's report on redistricting tonight, and Ms. Spruill is certainly going to do, in my opinion, a very thorough and excellent job. Just want to say something, not to be applied toward Ms. Spruill's presentation, but Mr. Mayor, this is good for us to have as a starting point. This is going to be a much-needed discussion and presentation by Ms. Spruill. Very well laid out information about redistricting. And after this report from Ms. Spruill, and I've been through this before, let's make sure that, and of course this is not to be slighted in any way with what we're doing, but as we proceed with the redistricting, Mr. Mayor, let's make sure that we call the board as a committee of the whole to speak as to decide where we go from here. Now, I'm not saying we're doing anything wrong, and we're not, but from this point forward, as to what maps are drawn, what models are drawn, who the map drawer is, before any other matter hit the agenda or appear on the agenda, let's make sure that we convene the mayor and the board as a whole so we can be at the table collectively to decide. But now we're on the right track tonight. I made Ms. Spruill real clear on that. I mean, it's nothing to do with what we're doing here, but just a housekeeping measure, nothing negative, just good. Hopefully it'll be positive information. That's all. Thank you.
Any further comments from the members of the board?
I
Alderman
got
Vaughn?
one. If the city don't know, while we was on conference, we had a 5K run. It was the last minute. Alderman from Ward 1, Alderman Carver, and the mayor, Alderman from 5, Mr. Dumas, and myself. We participated out of 88 contenders. We finished in the 40s. I mean, that was 3.5 miles all the way from Biloxi to Ocean Spring and back. So, I think we did a good job. We completed the race.
Well, well done, Mayor, and other participants.
And on top of that, the City of Hernando won this award last year, and they had 14 participants that ran. So
Yeah.
I challenge the City of Starkville next year to have that many running somehow, some way. I still stand by that we had the most elected officials running
That's
because
right.
most of theirs were city staff. But yeah, that was fun. Appreciate you saying that.
I want fun is the way I would put it. Any further comment? Alderman Carper.
While we're speaking about the conference, there's a couple highlights. I just want two, one with the conference and one with last night. But first of all, again, with the flag, that the city of Starkville adopted a flag. And from the history of this flag program, it started off with maybe 4 or 5, and now it's about 115 to 120 of the municipalities in the state. And it is a big deal to get in it, and it's a point of pride. And Starkville was well represented by Miss Outlaw's daughter. She carried the flag and also represented the mayor's youth council down there. And then just last night, I went to this 4th of July celebration and fireworks, but more about the patriotism, and they got it. The mayor did an excellent job promoting that, and we had all the candidates came out that wanted to speak on both the county level and the statewide level. Had 3 of the governor candidates come out, and just want to say that's the kind of thing that does create a sense of community and increases quality of life here in Starkville. And you did an excellent job, and Matthew Rye did an excellent job, and everything. It misty rain on back and forth all night, but the show went on anyway. But that's just the kind of things that draw people to Starkville. When you see a lot of, I was leaving the place last night, and you see a lot of car tags from all the neighboring counties. People come out, and so that's really a highlight for us each and every year. But thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Matthew, and everything y'all did last night.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. At this time, any citizen wishing to make comments this evening may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Tunnell, Ward 7. Good evening. Good evening to the House and Vice Mayor Citron and Alderman Vaughn.
Good evening, Al.
The citizens just have a few things that is very, very serious on the heart, and that is we're still waiting on our Christmas lights. We also have a problem with children that have behavioral problems. It's hard on the people and it's hard on the police department. It's hard when you have to take 4 police officers just to put handcuffs on one person. All right, it's hard, and we hope that it don't get to the point of where either the parent have to take the child out or either the police have to take the child out. We need to find a way to try to help these children with behavior problems. We also would like to get an update on the school board, where they're at on the school board. We also would like that if anyone damaged the signs or whatever, that they would be fined or either jail. It's a line hanging across on the through street, Wood and 12, and we don't know where it's connected to the box or not. And we would like to, it's a lot of limbs that's covering up stop signs and speed signs, and we would like for that to be taken care of. And that's just some concerns of the citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments tonight? Mr. Byrne?
Maybe brief. I'm Iowa Vernon from Ward 2. May I ask a question about an item that was put on the consent agenda?
Sure.
I refer to item 11I1, the request to advertise to fill vacant positions of police officers due to resignation. I'm wondering how many resignations were there, and what were the reasons given for the resignation?
Chief, normally you would talk about this.
That's right, man. I think the public deserves to know. We had 5 resignations. We have 53 officers. That's almost 10% of the force. They all have been accepted and admitted to Mississippi Highway Patrol School. And certainly one of the factors, although not all of it, was the fact that we started 32,000 and the Highway Patrol starts at 37,000. And that is one of the factors.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Burnham. Do we have any further citizen comments tonight? Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, that will carry us to public appearances. We have one public appearance scheduled tonight, and that is from Miss Helen Taylor with a potential grant program from Brick Fund. Oh, okay. And Shaq, you'll have a maximum of 10 minutes.
10 minutes, and I'll adhere to that. I promise. For those who may not know me, my name is Shaq Taylor. I'm here with Helen Taylor, the Chief Executive Officer of Brick Fire Project. I'm the Executive Deputy Director, and we're here with a unique opportunity. That opportunity is that we're here to try to achieve many objectives that the city may be facing. One of which is how do we increase quality educational opportunities, how do we increase job opportunities, and how do we build a state-of-the-art facility without going bankrupt. The opportunity that presented itself, we call it Project Design, Build, and Create. This opportunity is actually through the Department of Housing and Urban Development via the Starkville Public Housing Authority, and it's a $5 million grant just to build a child care facility. And we propose to build that right in Alderman Bond's Ward 7. The construction of the state-of-the-art child care facilities provides service to underserved populace. And also through this building of this facility, we propose a very unique opportunity to create partnerships that have wide-ranging impacts. One of the greatest benefits is that this particular grant will fund 95% of the project. Okay. It'll also address some community blight issues that we may be having in Ward 7. And of course, increase educational opportunities. We'll be able to provide an additional 120 child care students and after-school students with educational opportunities. Of course, this will help parents get back to work and job creation. Let's back that up. On this project design team, because it has to be written through the Starkville Housing Authority, which will be the lead grantee, Ms. Rebecca Carlisle, who's been there for many years, she'll be overseeing this project. And of course, Helen Taylor and myself, who all have child care experience and also building project experience as well. And we also enlisted the support of the Carl Small Town Center from Mississippi State University. We actually have a jump on this grant. We feel that we're very prepared for it because we've actually tried to go after other grants through the Small Town Center. So we already have some designs that will be incorporated into the facility. These are just some visuals. This is not the finished product, but some visuals of what we may be able to create with this facility. This, of course, being the front entrance. And also, if you know the terrain of the area, there's a hillside that we also plan on incorporating other structures. There will be detached learning centers and also artist quarters, which we'll talk about at a later date. Inside, of course, will be very spacious. We actually plan on putting in a full gymnasium so that we can have after-school programs, after-school athletic programs, and things of that nature to help get kids that are 12 and older off the street as well. And of course, playground structures in the back. These are some of the design renderings that the Small Town Center provided us with. We've been working with them for the better part of about 8 months now. And some of them would actually incorporate other cultural aspects. This would actually probably put you in the mind of a small Japanese village, actually. All the structures will be able to comply with any statewide organizations as far as the development of the facility, and incorporate high energy usage, state-of-the-art coverings, heating and cooling systems, overhead hangings. And then also we're looking at what we're proposing as far as contributions. Surely would not come before the city and ask for the whole thing, that 5%. There's a 5% leveraging that's mandatory to be able to get this money. We're looking at, to be able to complete the entire project, about $3.2 million. In that, we're asking from other partners, Child Fund International, who's a primary partner and contributor to Brickrock Project, of about $20,000. Starkville Housing Authority, about $60,000. Tippecanoe County, $15,000, and then the city of Starkville, $80,000. What we're banking on for results is, of course, again, the quality child care expansion of additional 120 children, and the creation of 12 permanent jobs, a state-of-the-art facility, and community revitalization efforts realized. And then back again to the same topics as before. Grant funding, community development, decreased community blight, helping parents and students get back to work, increased educational opportunities, and then lastly, job creation. I'd like to entertain any questions that you may have.
And the city's portion of the contribution could be made through in-kind services?
It can be made surely through in-kind services. It could be cash contributions or in-kind services. And all of this is for the construction of the facility. So, for example, if Brickfire paid for the materials, it could be like sidewalk materials with concrete and rebar and things like that, then the city could possibly pour it and use the manpower to finish the work. Starkville Housing Authority, they'll be using their staff to actually help finish it through painting, through laying flooring, putting in lighting fixtures and things of that nature. So the effort could be as creative as necessary. So it can be cash or in-kind services.
And I actually asked a question I knew the answer to, because I had talked to Ms. Taylor this afternoon, and I've got the city attorney researching to what extent legally we can provide in-kind services. Now, I didn't get that question to him until late this afternoon, so he hasn't gotten me an answer yet. But my understanding is that the grant application's not due until July 23rd?
21st.
The 21st.
21st,
Okay.
11:59.
Okay. So hopefully between now and the July 19th meeting of the Board of Alderman, we can get everything fleshed out and determine what options exist for assistance. Questions, comments from the members of the board? Alderman Carter.
I liked your presentation. I've been writing questions as you go. And one of the things you said, the location, is it, where exactly is that location?
Actually, it's where Brickfire main offices are on 143 Westside Drive. We propose moving the trailers that are there, that are leaking and needing more parking space and the whole gamut of having old trailers, and replacing it right there on that 1.2 acres.
I like the fact you said it's 95% grant funded, but do you see that you're going to be coming, do you have is that grant going to be good for 10 years? Or, as far as your operating, maintaining your operation of the facilities over there?
That grant is just for the construction.
Just for the construction?
It's just for the construction of the facility.
How do you plan on funding the jobs and the?
Well, actually, that's where Brickfire comes in with the partnership. Actually, the grant will be given to Starkville Housing Authority, so it'll be another facility that they own and operate. There'll be a long-term lease involved with Brickfire and Starkville Housing Authority, and Brickfire will actually employ employees, because we'll have increased facilities where we can actually get in more students, and more funding.
Mr. Mayor, let me ask one question. Mr. Taylor, let's make sure we have some clarity on your, if I did not misread it, you said that the city's requested share is $80,000. I was under the impression, I guess from prior information, that you're looking at $40,000 a year from the city of Starkville over a 5-year period. Tell me how that became a difference tonight.
Well, actually, our numbers were a little miscued when we first talked to you. That $80,000 we're talking about is a lot less than the 45 that were initially thought over a 5-year period of time.
So basically, instead of 40, you're looking at 16,000.
Exactly.
Okay. I just had to point that out because I just was provided that information, and I just saw that I had to ascertain that from the presentation.
Yes, because this is a one-time building grant, it's not ongoing.
Okay.
So after that initial grant is written, then that's when all the contributors pretty much kick in.
And the requirement's over a 5-year period?
No, it's my understanding that the requirement that the 4 years are phased out over the construction period, but it's to be completed. There's some other things to be done. So that part was still kind of ironing out with the back end with the small town center.
But it's not necessarily a one-time either payment or provision of in-kind services in a 1-year period?
No, it's not.
Two final things. So I got the 5 years from our discussion. And just make sure you're real clear. Of course, your concept and your ideology sounds good. Just so we're real clear, I wouldn't have mentioned this if the mayor had made the comments, but I need to close it out so we'll understand. The mayor said he's going to have the city attorney to research that.
Yes.
But you understand, and just to make sure we're clear, I know you do, but before we always have a good understanding. So once the mayor research it, it'll be a board decision. Okay, guys, just make sure we're all together.
Alderman Parker.
And again, I think it's a great opportunity, and I support our match. Honestly, I would probably support if we were matching 5%, I would probably honestly support that. But is there any reason why the county doesn't have more percentage than us? I mean,
That's what it was.
they're the one for the money.
Not particularly.
Because I'd love to see the county have a bigger piece of the pie. I mean, they're getting,
Right, and that's part of the whole idea about partnership. And we, the idea of community partners not coming to one agency and asking for the whole amount. So that we have resources and friends and other friends as well. So not just being able to, spread the load around. But to give you a firm answer, I can't do that.
Mr. Mayor, one last question.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, for raising that. I brought that up to you the other day about approaching the county. The county needs to, they need to have an equal division. If we're being asked for 80,000, I think they need to pay at least 80,000 greater. They get all this money in and make all these appropriations. They need to be held accountable, just like you all are here before us. And I don't mind you appearing here and asking. We just have to make the decision based upon the facts and the record. And I think is $15,000 for the county? That's ridiculous. They need, that's all. Who made the decision to ask them for $15,000?
It was arbitrary.
Well, they need to, they need to pay more money. They need to be asked for more money. It's not fair to ask. No disrespect. I like your project. I'm a straight talker. No disrespect to you. They need to be asked to pay more than $15,000 versus asking us for 80. Is it because? And let me say, just because we may be more receptive or the thought process, but put the figure to them. And so at least you can try to get, a greater consideration from us. They need to be asked to pay the same amount. They're elected officials. They're accountable, and hold them accountable. That's how that works. No disrespect to you, but I want to be very fervent in my appeal to you, so you can go back to the drawing board and ask them for some dollars, look them in the face, and tell them what you need. That's how it goes.
And I think conversations like this will actually turn up the heat on,
Right. And we want you all to do it too. You're the requesting party. Because you're going to be back here on the 19th. So when you come back on the 19th, I want you to be able to tell me what dollar figure or percentage you have actually accounted for. I'm going to remember to ask that question. Okay? Thank you, Mr.
Have you talked to the county yet?
We have not. We're further back on their agenda, so they'll be meeting with us after this day.
And the housing authority is good on their commitment?
Yeah, House Notice. And the Christian Child Fund International is
Good.
The county will be using the facility too, won't they?
exactly.
Oh,
Their children, we serve.
their children will be using the facility, okay.
Free Pride serves about 800 children and families in Starkville County through our sponsorship program. So all of them are welcome, invited, and we'll be utilizing those services.
We need to go back and get some more money.
Are there any further comments from the members of the board? Any further questions, comments?
Thank you very much. Y'all did a great
Thank
job.
you
Mr.
so
Taylor.
much.
Thank
Yeah,
y'all
thank
so
y'all.
much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbs. All right, that will carry us to a public hearing that we have scheduled tonight. And it is the first public hearing on amending the solid waste ordinance 2010-3. Alderman Parker, would you like to introduce?
I'll try to introduce some of the high points that when we changed the name of the sanitation division, we basically are changing the name in our ordinance itself. We've also, as everyone knows, taken over rubbish collection, so we've incorporated that into the new ordinance. The city attorney has made some notes on maybe some language that he would like cleared up by the next hearing, so we'll be working with him to clear up some language that make sure that ensures that we're getting our point across of what we need. We're not trying to impose or any type of carts or cart systems or anything to that effect. We're still on the regular garbage bags that we pass out twice a year. So we'll clear up any of that language in there that seemed that anybody could misconstrue. We've changed a little bit of the things that we pick up as far as limbs. We've gone to actually a more generous allowance on limbs, the length of the limbs and the circumference of the limbs. We have changed the fine schedule to allow it to reset once a year. So I guess a property owner is not, if he has a rental, if it's a rental, he's not paying the highest amount even though there's somebody else living in it, that it may be their first offense. So it will reset every January. Those are kind of the high points. I received in my packet the comments from the city attorney, so we'll be getting some of that stuff cleared up by the next public meeting. But the other thing that was brought up last time was construction debris, and I've had a few questions about construction debris and carpet. And right now, as the ordinance is written, it would not allow construction debris. It would only allow carpet if you could fit it inside the black bag. We've approved tonight the fixing of the scales at the Starkville landfill. So we will have new scales and a new computer system at the Starkville landfill. So right now the policy is that if you do a home improvement project yourself, you're allowed to take that construction debris and rubbish to the landfill for free. So they're not charging you when you take it. Once we get the computer system set up, then we can set up the parameters that we need to make sure to make sure that a homeowner's not taking advantage of that, and making sure it's not a contractor that's taking advantage of that. So once we get that system in place, we'll be able to make the rules that say you can come out here and bring things free, whatever that 3 times a year, 4 times a year, whatever that rule may be, we can set that up. But the policy right now is you can take anything you do as a home improvement project yourself, you can take to the landfill for free. So the problem with having a specific day for construction debris cleanup is that nobody's going to hold that debris until that day. They're going to probably automatically put it at the road as soon as they get through, and it's going to be unsightly to be at the road until that day comes once a month or something. So those are the high points of the things that we have amended, and would welcome any comments.
Any questions or comments for Alderman Parker? Alderman Carver?
Just for clarification with the, I kind of want clarification on, you're saying if it's a renter and they've got, as far as the fine assessment, is it passed to the property owner?
Ultimately, the property owner is responsible. The way the ordinance is written, it says tenant or owner. So what's happening right now is if somebody moved into my apartments and I don't have any, but in August, and they put their garbage out on the wrong day, the first fine schedule is a certain amount. The second time is a higher amount. The third time is another higher amount. Well, when they move out, these people have new renters that come in, and they're automatically starting at the highest amount. So it may be those renters' first violation, but because the property owner has had multiple violations, then he stays at that amount. So this will reset it in January of each year. But it ultimately will be the responsibility if the tenant doesn't pay it. It's the property owner's right to either add that, whatever policy they want to have to get that money from the tenant. But ultimately, it's got to be the responsibility of the property owner, I would think.
And Chris, you okay with the
The law allows you to assess fees against either the occupant or the owner. The only exception is if the renter's garbage fees are rolled into the rent, then you can't assess fees against that person. However, that would be an affirmative defense that the renter would have if we tried to charge a fee against them. It's not our job to be an affirmative police on how somebody's lease is read. So the default setting under the law is you can assess against the occupant or the owner.
What about the and/or statement under section 15? Are we good with that? Where it says the owner and/or occupant for each residential collection unit, whether or not is occupied, shall be responsible for payment.
Yeah, that's what I was speaking to.
Okay.
That language comports with the law.
All right.
Are there any further questions or comments? Any further questions?
Yeah,
or
I've
comments?
got just a couple more. I mentioned this last time, and I just want to maybe say this again. Under domestic waste, we strike the language stumps, logs, tree trunks. Under commercial waste, we talk about trees, shrubs, weeds, plants, grass, and then we talk about the size limitations of what those should be. And then under garden trash, we talk about does not include stumps, logs, and tree trunks. And then we also say that again under tree trimmings. I think it would be better, or I think we need to add a line. I think the way it's written is good, but it would also help if we perhaps added a definition line for stumps, logs, and or tree trunks. Just so we're clear on that, because I think what we're trying to do under commercial waste is establish that, but I don't think most would go to commercial waste to see what stumps, logs, and tree trunks are. Under section 2, and I guess this goes under section 4 too for containers. I know I see where Chris has put language in there about mandated carts, et cetera. And I agree with that. I think we need to be real careful there. But at the same time, I know I've got one cart and like a container, like a 55-gallon container I put out on the road. And I'm guessing that the nature or the spirit of section 2 was saying you can put your bags in a cart or in a container. Not that you have to by any means.
And that's supposed to be the intention, is to tell people that they can use a cart.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, if you use a cart, you can put your garbage out the night before rather than 5 a.m. the next morning. So, but it's not a city supplied
Right.
cart.
No, I understand that. And I think we just need to be careful because, frankly, I think it's probably, well, I don't know. Sharon could probably tell us more about what her people see as the most efficient, but I guess that's the fine line we go when we talk about containers versus no containers.
Right.
And how that language is.
Alderman Dumas, may I speak to that briefly, just with a suggestion of how to clear that up?
Mhm.
The word container is a defined term under this ordinance. So the first thing I think to do would be to spell out exactly what is allowed under container, including the option for a cart, if that's the intent of the board with this. And then when you get to section 2, and then when you get to the other section about residential garbage, specifically refer back to the definition, and then say again that this doesn't necessarily mandate carts, but it gives the option.
Right.
If that's the intent, that's the way to clear it up.
Well, because some would read the definition under container. I mean, that goes from the bags we supply all the way to the dumpster, and it ends the sentence with furnished by the city. So some could probably read that as
And that
not
was,
just commercial type that are supplied, but
that was
refuse
the
can.
ambiguity, that's right.
All right.
That's right.
Mr. Mayor, let me just have one final brief comment, just as a good housekeeping matter, and I want to commend the gentleman from 3 for his hard work and his report. Well, let me just say this, I think this will help all of us out, not only with this ordinance, but also for future ordinances. Before we get to vote on the final product, I would recommend that the city attorney get with like with Alderman Parker here and incorporate the board concerns and issues that are confusing from a legal perspective, so we can have the best product to do what the board wants done. So I guess we'll probably have the second public hearing probably on the 19th and probably a vote. So if we can just get the city attorney to meet in ample time with Mr. Parker and all these concerns be taken, so we'll have us a good, clean, precise product with no ambiguity when we come on the 19th. So we can just get that done, Mr. Mayor. Gentlemen, you have no objection with that?
No,
I mean,
not at all.
that'll be a clean thing to do, so Mr. Attorney, you has worked with him?
I'll get up with Mr.
Yes, sir.
Alderman Carter.
In section 2, property maintenance, I want to touch on this while I've got it here. Been trying to address some things in Ward 1, such as unsightly yards and people not cutting knee to waist high grass and just accumulation of trash. And there's a whole section in here in D, talks about not allowed to have junk, waste paper, discarded building materials, parts. It's also shall be unlawful for the owners or occupants of any land or premises in the city to permit excessive growth of weeds and other plants on the land. So is this going to be an ordinance that we can go out and use this through the code enforcement officer for the city to try to clean up some of these blighted areas? And
Well, the code enforcement office technically enforces every aspect of our code that's what you would consider nuisance code. So yes.
see, I mean, that's one thing Jeff and I have really been talking about, and maybe trying to come up with an ordinance or some of these aesthetic things that we're dealing with in Ward 1. But I mean, seeing this in here, I'm kind of, I guess, I'm thrilled to see it, or just the fact that this is something that we can go and so we could use this to actually try to clean up some of these yards or areas that maybe have.
Just depends on how much you want to expand that mechanism, and the only thing I would say be cautious about is expanding it too much beyond the scope of sanitation services.
And the state statute on point for blighted properties.
What do you mean by that?
There's a statute that governs the cleanup of dilapidated properties. And we'll make sure we track that language and don't go beyond that.
I'll just be touching base with you, I guess, to figure out what I can do to combat some of those issues.
Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll now move into the public comment portion of the public hearing. And in keeping with standard practice, we will hear first a speaker for the proposed ordinance, then a speaker against the proposed ordinance on an alternating basis for a maximum of 3 minutes each, with each side allotted a maximum total of 15 minutes. We will continue to do that until either both sides have exhausted their time or no one else wishes to speak. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment? Mr. Burnham?
Milo Burnham from Ward 2. Again, I have a question before I get into this as to whether or not I only deal with the yellow outline sections or the whole ordinance.
Well, the outline sections are the proposed changes.
But none of the other information is up for discussion.
I'm sorry.
What you've got is you've got the original ordinance with the sections that are subject to change
Well,
with the amendment.
I noticed that the amendments include, rather than just saying sanitation department, a lot of them include then the change as and environmental sciences. But I read the ordinance, and I'm not bright as star in the sky, so I read it again. And I bogged down in it on a number of issues. So I don't know whether this is the appropriate time to bring up those issues or not.
Yeah, and what this time is intended for is for comments. And then
Well,
if the board chooses, they can address those comments
And my
at the end.
comments are in opposition to the proposed ordinance as it stands and is presented and is put on the city website. All right, I found it rather confusing when I got into it, and for the general public, I think it would be very difficult to understand and come out of this with a clear knowledge of what the city's ordinance is regarding whether it's trash, rubbish, waste, or garbage, because that in itself is confusing, those four terms. I find that some items are considered, such as furniture and appliances, were considered domestic waste, but also household rubbish. That in itself can be somewhat confusing. I also noted, though, that in dealing with certain waste products, such as dead animals and animal waste, that I noticed under, I think it was on page 12, it says that certain wastes unsuitable for collection, the City Sanitation and Environmental Services Department shall not collect or remove in any quantity the following. And the first item is dead animals, animal dressings, or animal manure. And it would seem to me that if you can get it in a black plastic bag, it's gone, and that the city will pick it up. Because as I read this, though, it says that I'm in violation if I put a dead mouse in a plastic bag, and I don't know who's going to enforce that. Now, I understand that by common sense, one would not put a dead cow out on the curb, but I'm sure there are a lot of dead mice that go out, and there are a lot of dead possums, or as opposed to whether or not my dog gets run over, and I leave it in the street for the city to pick up, or I put it in a plastic bag. So I have concerns about that. I think it's ambiguous. I think that this document needs to be gone through, the definitions need to be cleared up, and it needs to be prepared in a manner that the public will understand it. And if you're talking about waste, there seems to be a lot of concern about putting animal waste in the garbage. What do you do with the droppings that you pick up from your dog in a plastic bag? You take them home and bury them, or do you put them in the garbage? And if you put them in the garbage, it's in violation.
Thank you, Mr. Burnham. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? All right, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance amendment?
Reading, my name is Alvin. I just have a 12th grade education. I can read and write. Why is it that so much changing have to be done to ordinance? You change a lot of ordinance and everybody get mad with the department head. But then we find out that when we change it, we make it worse. Now we pay good money for those trucks, but then you have some people that might put the wrong thing in there. It explodes, and that'd be a lost truck. Or either we could someone could get hurt by not knowing that something is explosive in a garbage bag or whatever. If nothing wrong with an ordinance, we should let it stay solid, because you get to change the ordinance, then the people start breaking the law, or I'm not going to do any of it. And so let's be concerned about the safety of the people that have to pick up this stuff, the drivers, and you don't want to put nothing that explode. I don't know how much those trucks cost, but we cannot take a risk. We have had one catch fire. Take all that under consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance?
Good evening, everybody. How you doing, all? I'm here. My name is Tony Self. I'm concerned about the highway. Our highways need to be on 82, West 82. The highways need to be straightened out, because it's busy. Highway 82 need to be straightened out. The roads are, kind of crooked. We need to straighten those roads out.
You were a little late joining us this evening. We're having a public hearing about the sanitation ordinance. Do you have any comments related to the proposed changes?
Well, that go for them. Oh. The roads, the highways, the sanitation have to deal with the roads, because they got to pick up the sanitation. You got the roads cracked. I seen some of them almost fell off the road. And I walk all the time, and I've seen this thing numerous, times. The roads cracked.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Do we have anyone at this time wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the ordinance? I think all members of the public here tonight might have already spoken. Is there anyone remaining that would like to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed ordinance change?
Mayor, may I make one comment?
You may.
This comment comes in light of the comments by Mr. Burnham and Mr. Turner. I think the revision to this ordinance started, and Mr. Parker, tell me if I'm wrong on this, and I know Ms. Sproul had a large part in trying to draft this, and it's hard to write law. And the spirit was to just change sanitation department to sanitation division and to hit some broad strokes in this ordinance. The issue you bump into is when you start tinkering with some of the stuff, it triggers perhaps the need to tinker with it all. And so it seems like we're kind of in a middle no man's land. And so the thought might be either just to clean it up to say sanitation division when it used to say sanitation department and leave the rest alone, or have a wholesale word by word revision of this ordinance, which is going to be a longer process than one more board meeting to make sure we're doing it right. Just some thoughts.
Do we have any further public comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move back into general discussion by the members of the board on ordinance. Are there any further comments by the members of the board? Any further comments by the members of the board? Are there any further comments by the members of the board? Seeing none, that will conclude the first public hearing on proposed amendments to the sanitation ordinance. And that will carry us to board business. And our first item of board business tonight is a presentation by Chief Administrative Officer Lynn Sproul, who has been doing the background work to get us prepared for the redistricting process. As you'll recall, the board a couple of months ago decided to handle redistricting as a result of the decennial census as a committee of the whole. Ms. Sproul has been working feverishly along with Andrew Nagel, who is our GIS coordinator, to prepare a presentation on how we get started in addressing the issue of redistricting. And that's what we'll cover tonight, and then we'll have the opportunity for some questions and comments by the members of the board. Ms. Sproul?
Thank you, Mayor and Board, and acknowledging Alderman Perkins' comments. We're going to be very basic this evening, and so we'll try not to get into any real details, but Andrew's been very kind to put a PowerPoint together, and he has downloaded the data that was necessary to put all this together, so I'm going to give him all the credit. I did a little research on the internet and on our previous submission. What you have in front of you, additional two pieces of paper would be the benchmark data from our last submission in 2000, which shows it's the graph.
So this is what
That's
they are.
That's what we
That was
submitted
what they were
in 2000.
2000. Okay.
Yes, and then the other item that you have in front of you, which was not included in Andrew's slides, is the voting age minority, which is an important figure when you begin to actually craft the different wards, but it's the current status of the voting age. We're very fortunate, at least in my opinion, in our numbers that have come out from our census to reflect that we've had an increase in population. We're now at 23,888, I believe it is. And we've got our 7 wards. The 2 wards that got the most, the 2 wards that got the most are Ward 1 and Ward 3 grew in population the most, so Alderman and Parker's wards grew. The requirements are set essentially by the federal government. You've got the Voting Rights Act and you've got an equal population requirement. And our voting wards are 7, and we're required to maintain those 7 wards. We're required to maintain communities of interest, which are either demographic or geographic in nature, which would be like a particular neighborhood or a particular area of interest for a group. I'm sorry, yeah.
Questions on that? I mean, when you say a neighborhood, is that historic? I mean, explain more in
But
detail.
geographic or demographic. So geographic would be Green Oaks, for example. Or, I'm sorry? No, or Rolling Hills or Plantation Homes, or those are kinds of the geographic neighborhoods of interest. The minority population would be your demographic area, community of interest.
So let's like say with my ward, Greensboro, do you go off the historic district and you can't split the district basically?
That would be one of the ways that you could look at it.
Okay.
But your subdivisions or in a historic neighborhood would work as well.
Okay.
So, wards, and these are when we Andrew's got requirements up there. These are the things that you want to do your best at maintaining. Now you know in some cases you're not going to be able to do an absolute, but maintaining the communities of interest as best you can. Wards should be compact and contiguous. We looked at our state redistricting, and we have one ward or one district that went from Alabama all the way across to the Delta. So, that's not exactly compact. But you do the best you can in maintaining a ward that can be compact and certainly contiguous. The population numbers cannot exceed a 10% difference. One of the beauties of the technology these days is I think we'll be able to achieve probably a 1% difference once we get into it and start actually applying the computer program.
And that's difference of ward versus ward?
Yes.
Current data?
Yes,
Okay.
current data, yes. The census blocks should not be divided. The number of minority wards must be maintained. Minority wards must have 50% or greater. 65% or greater is the number that will keep you from entertaining much of a dispute from any sector of the population who wants to talk about what you did in your redistricting. If you were 65% with a minority population, in this case we have probably our current population is showing voting age minority on the sheet in front of you showing 67.52 and 67.25 in our two minority wards. So we're above the 65%, yes.
Your bullet point on the number of minority wards must be maintained, is that a city is that a city?
Yes, our current we have two minority wards, and
That's
they should
right.
be maintained.
Is that through the city? Where'd that number come from?
That's the Voting Rights Act. Well, the two wards were part of the previous development of our wards. We've had a lawsuit, I can't remember the.
We had a lawsuit that predated the 2005
Right.
term in wards. We used to have 6 wards at large as of the 01-05 term.
Yes.
And then in 2005 term, then the 7th ward became effective. And the answer to that question is that the Voting Rights Act, which is federal law. And one quick thing, that's a great example you gave him about the compact and contiguous. Green Oaks used to be wards 1, 2, and 6. And that's what we did in last redistricting to make it compact and contiguous, made it just one ward, because I used to represent a portion down there.
Okay.
And I didn't know what year the lawsuit was particularly, but I knew it took effect in 2005. So.
Right. It came during the 2001-05 term and went to federal court, and that's what it ended up with what we have now.
Okay.
There we go. So, and then the other thing that Andrew did was in part of what you're going to see there, and this, by the way, for everyone else who might be interested, this information is also on the website under the e-packet. It was posted, so what you have in front of you, aside from those 2 pieces of paper there, is also available to anyone who wants to get on the website. Elected and appointed officials, officials certainly keeping them in the same wards or the current wards, but we also put in the appointed officials, and that's one of the maps you'll have in front of you that shows that people who are appointed by you to represent your ward for whether it's the Park Commission or any of our planning and zoning commission, we've tried to keep them in the same ward as we go through this process. That'll be one of the things we'll try to do as best we can so that will be the least disruptive. And these are the things that Andrew did using his GIS and computer skills. He downloaded the census block from the Mississippi Automated Resource Information System. And then the census block is the smallest unit that's used by the U.S. Census Bureau. And we have, I believe, 702 census blocks. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And he also did each one of those, and that will fit with the chart that you have in front of you. The current population for the city of Starkville is now 702. Total population 23,888, and with our number of wards. And the way we determine what our ideal population is simply divide the number of wards into the total population. For that, we get 3,413 will be our ideal population from which we'll work as we determine who's going to lose people and who's going to gain people. And that's the number we're shooting for each one of the wards to be as close to 3,413 as we possibly can get. Here are your current wards. The heavy black line is the way the current wards are laid out now. The gray areas are showing some of the divided census blocks. So this is what we'll be working with to try to make sure the neighborhoods stay contiguous and compact. But you can see now that we have some areas that are divided that we're going to have to work with and try to make that so that we aren't dividing census blocks. And there's 11 of them, as Andrew's got in the PowerPoint slide there. These are our current ward numbers. We're missing some of the data. That's one of the reasons I put the minority voting population in front of you. So you've got total population, you've got the total white percentage of that, total minority, and the percentage of minority. So that's a total minority rather than including the black voting population. There's the population that has the most. Alderman Harper's ward and Alderman Carver's ward, 5,026 and 4,755. And you guys got to lose some to go down to 34, 13 or thereabouts, and you're going to have to give it up to everybody else. And that's going to be the interesting key. Here are the wards with all of the appointments and the elected officials in them. So that's where we'll also try to work to, if we can, certainly it would be difficult, but if we can, keep the appointed officials in their wards as well. It would make it certainly easier for us to have to then go back and make appointments based on that.
Have there been any substantial wards that have had major losses of population? I mean,
Let's go back to the last slide and see major losses in population. Your benchmark data here, it's the gains that have been the most interesting in Ward 3, but the previous population for Ward 2, everybody's lost some. Ward 2 was at 3189 and they're now at 2707. Ward 4 was at 3264 and it's now at 2827. Ward 5 was at 2976 and it's 2965, so very close. 6 was at 3082 and it's now 2875. And 7 was at 2735 and it actually, or was at 3064, it's now 2735. So everybody's lost a little with the exception of 1 and 3.
So 2 and 4 mainly, and then 7.
Yeah.
how does this play in with the students in Ward 4? Are most of those, do you mean in your opinion, no right or wrong answer, most of those registered back at the house, or are they getting included in Starkville's census data?
Well, we tried our best to get the students included in the census data, but, you know, that's a sort of a hit or miss, and I don't know how successful we actually ended up being.
You're looking at the breakdown by population, a substantial number of them were. The largest age demographic we had in the census was by far the 20 to 24 age demographic, which that shows you're picking up a lot of student population. In regards to whether they're registered, they can register here or they can remain registered at home. That's a question separate and independent of what their status is for census purposes.
We had a strong push, and I think we succeeded to a certain extent.
Okay, thank you. Got lots of questions, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, well, that's
First
okay.
time.
I mean, we're sort of at the end. This was a huge overview, so.
Okay, really concerned about this right here. So each one of those dots is either an appointed Board of Alderman, Parks, or worst case scenario, and somebody has to be taken out of any particular ward, and there's a lot of those right around the lines and things like that. Would they be allowed to finish their term, or would that be something that they're
That's entirely up to the board or how the ordinance is written.
I think it's where the ordinance is written. Last time I read it, of course, I can't keep a photostatic memory of the ordinance, but I know at one time, like the planning and zoning, for example, if you're not a resident of that ward, you automatically vacate your seat. Now, I'm not saying this is a current status of the law, but I know that was the intent at one time. You probably can check back and let us know, but I know if you no longer a resident of that ward, then there's some language in there at one time with an automatic vacation of that seat, because we've gone through a few of those in the past.
And I believe that's still true for P&Z. I'm not sure we were quite so hardline with some of the other, but we'd have to look at each ordinance, or each
to see if they're more specific?
yes, each part of the boards or the commission or
Right, okay.
enabling language. Anything else? If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask. That was pretty much it. I mean, I provided you a narrative. It was just the Voting Rights Act, Sections 2 and Sections 5 that are applicable. And then whatever the board wishes to do from a go-forward standpoint, obviously, we will bring it forward at the next, whenever the board's ready to meet again on this particular issue.
And that's a good topic for discussion tonight. We need a little guidance on how y'all would like to proceed from here. The next step from here is to get some preliminary maps out there. Alderman Perkins?
Yes, sir, Mayor, let me just say this. We got a lot going on in the city right now. Two key things that are going on, the budget process, and I'll let the budget committee chairperson speak to that in the interest of protocol, but it is my anticipation that we're probably having, I'm not trying to speak for the chairperson, but it's my anticipation that we'll probably having a couple of public hearings adopting the budget probably, if everything goes well, and, and depending on what the committee say, we're a committee of 3, so I don't speak for anybody other than Alderman Perkins, but I think we'll be doing that through at least maybe about August, and then we got this public hearing on the municipal complex. I think an election is going to try to be scheduled probably in September. So, we're in 11. I think we need to let those 2 issues pass us. We don't need to put too much out there to the public right now. So I think we need to pick back up on this after the budget process, because we're going to have to deal with some issues there with the budget process, and then we're going to have to deal with the municipal complex. We're going to have the town hall meetings. And in order for the public to buy into that municipal complex, we're going to have to educate the public and sell that thing. So we don't need to have redistricting out there in this process. So I would suggest that we just wait until after, September to pick back up on this, because those other 2 issues are going to take and consume the public's attention and time, given the magnitude of those 2 matters. And I think there's a very credible representation I'm making to you.
Further comments? Alderman Dumas.
The voting age minority that you gave us here is different than the percent minority on the current ward. Is the percent minority on the current ward, that's purely census? This is voter age and above?
That's the black population.
So this is black population only?
And you got a.
And this percent minority would be?
Total minority.
Total minority.
That includes Hispanic. Several of them.
Further comments by the members of the board?
I've got
Alderman
mine
Carver.
where I'm giving up. You want?
I'm sorry?
I'm just kidding.
Alderman Carver.
My opinion is that before we get any kind of mapping or anything like that, I want to be heavily involved, and I think anybody that's on the committee, or I think all of us should be, we all have a vested interest in this. But
And for
definitely
clarification, you are all on the committee.
Committee of the whole.
Well, okay, I'm just going to say, this is a great presentation. It gets us started, gets everybody's mind thinking of what we got to do, but this is probably one of the most crucial things we're going to do while in this office, and it happened to fall on our term. But before you really get into map, and at least with Ward 1, wait till I can look at what you got and where you go from there.
And that raises an interesting topic, which is what I alluded to a moment ago. The next step is for Andrew, who is our GIS coordinator, to begin conceptualizing some maps. Ideally, a part of that process is gaining feedback from you, the board. Now, if we're saying that we want to wait until after September to have a meeting to discuss that, then that's understood. I just need to know that that's what we're saying. Or if you would like our office to set up meetings where you can provide feedback in the office, we can do that as well. But I'd like some feedback as to how you'd like to do it. Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want this thing to be where we have just individual alderman meeting with staff. I've been down this road, and I know how this politics can go. What we need to do, we need to have a committee meeting during the board meeting, or we have a separate meeting, and we give instructions. I don't want to see the staff give us no model wards. We'll give instructions. Well, I would prefer for us to give instructions on what we do, because and we don't need the staff suggesting what wards. Let's talk more about it. Let the suggestions come out of the committee process, because if you start having aldermen just to meet individually before we get this process going, then we don't want, for example, the technology person to think, well, I got to present this map here to accommodate this person. Not to say that'll happen, but I think all of the suggestions need to come within this room and confines, so it can be a committee process, so we'll all know what's happening, what's going on, because this is going to last us, this redistricting, and once it's approved by the board and justice, this remains in force and effect for a long time. So I think that we need to just meet again, and or whatever we're going to decide, it needs to be said from this room. I think we need to decide what maps we want to do. We'll need to have individual alderman meeting and giving instruction to Ms. Brule or the technology person all this needs to come to this table so we can hear it. It'll be a clean and unpoliticized process, because that was one of the reasons that, you know, that I suggested we take Ms. Spruill and Ms. Outlaw off the, you know, the committee, you know, some time ago, because this thing, you know, they get caught up in politics real quick in this thing, and it's not good for us, for them. So to conclude here, what I'm saying is that whatever direction we go from here, the board needs to give the direction to the staff. We all, if we want to look at some models, they can do the models in this room here, so we all can look at it. We all can have say-so. We can see it, we can hear it, we can discuss, and we can decide. So whatever the majority says, out of 7, you know, the normal process, it'll be here. We don't want to hear something, well, you know, this is the same map that that he had when we discussed Alderman Perkins, for example. You know, then here it is, it's politicized, you see. But let's do it all in the room, and we can look at it and decide it. And therefore, it'll be a good, open, clean, viable, democratic, and governmental process. So whatever the board decides, then that's what happens. Whatever this board decides, but let's just do it and decide and discuss it all here.
So then, perhaps a potential next step, when we reconvene on the subject later this fall, would be to have either at a meeting or a work session a time for general feedback, where Andrew comes in and asks questions and takes notes with board members providing feedback.
Right, Ms. Brewer can be here, and we give whoever we want to give instructions to, whoever here is that can contribute to the process. Yes, sir, that's good. Okay. That's a good process.
Would you agree that, would you want to see, because the technology now is such to where we can put the hard line objective parameters in there, yes, of you know, percent deviation or whatever those may be, and we could probably spit out as many models as we want to based on the technology. Yes, and so would it be helpful? I think it would be helpful for mine. I mean, I like what you're saying, yes, but I would like to, it would be good for me if we could see potential maps,
okay,
that we could then wrap conversation around, of saying,
right, your idea is good. You're on point, but what I'm just saying is, I just want us to give the direction as opposed to them just coming up with the map. You know,
right.
We can give the feedback. That's all things. If we give feedback, then he'll bring the maps. I mean, that's good what you're saying. I mean, that's
but
very
I think
good.
they could take the parameters set forth by the Voters' Rights Act and the census data we have, and then just produce base models,
okay,
base maps,
okay,
that we can then look at to say that met the demands of the policy of the Voters' Rights Act, and then we could have discussions around that.
Okay, so you want them to do that for the next time we meet?
I think that would be helpful,
okay,
and it may be better for Andrew too, because it would probably be more difficult for him to go back then and just take subjective data to try to put it in a model, when he could probably take the hard line of set the parameters. We want each ward to have this population, this percentage, whatever it may be, and then look at what those potentials are.
Right, Ms. Mary, that's a good idea in the interest of time. See, that's the feedback he's giving. So I have no objection with Mr. You know, like, that's the feedback the Alderman's giving. So we can bring that in for our next meeting whenever we're going to discuss it again. So when do we want to discuss it? I mean, what's the projected date?
Now, if we're going to wait until a little later in the fall, we don't have the calendar or anything tonight.
Right, that's just my suggestion now. I don't know what the other board members.
I think that makes sense. I think the points you made about how full the city agenda is going to be over the next couple of months, and the importance of redistricting, along with the fact that we're under no critical timeline for this, make it something that is probably timely to do in mid-fall. And now, if I understand correctly, Andrew would prepare a base map to be distributed at that next meeting when it's convened, which I'm guessing would be just this is statistically speaking a way to level out all of the wards. And that would be provided to the board for feedback. And at that point in time, he'll take those comments, and we'd be ready for the next step after that's concluded.
And I wouldn't even say one map. I mean, there's multiple ways, you know, to skin that cat, obviously. So as many models as he can produce, maps that have that meet the criteria of completely objective requirements.
We
then
can also, make them large size and put them up on the wall, so that, you know, these very small maps are difficult to
Right.
get, but we can make some larger sizes. And
Because I think then, as a committee of a whole, we can then have the hard discussion of, no, I want this, or no, you want that, based on maps that we see then in front of us. Because otherwise, I think it would be very difficult to just verbally say, let's do this or that.
But that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
I know it takes roads into account. Does it take like creeks?
Yes.
Like major waterways and
Yeah.
things like that into account?
use some natural dividing lines.
You
All
saying
right,
that
so
'cause you chair the
Andrew-
stormwater ordinance?
I'm looking for consensus on this. We'll see if we have it. Andrew will prepare a series of maps that are his best objective attempts to level the population amongst 7 wards. And it sounds like this may be ideal for a work session where we can have them pinned on the walls. Board members can discuss them, and he can gain the feedback, and then we can move on in the process. Is that something that's agreeable with everybody? All right,
Use that
and
new
we're going to wait until
Start.
late September or early October. In the meantime, Andrew is going to be busily preparing some maps.
Do we want to do this like prior to a board meeting? Because everybody's usually available on Tuesdays, maybe have a work session prior to a board meeting or during a board meeting? Because I had heard you say something about in a board meeting.
Oh, no, whenever it's best for the board. I mean, I'll be here.
Okay. Well, I mean.
Whenever, just give us a recommendation when the time gets near.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Great job, Ms. Brewer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andy.
All right, and Ms. Brewer, you can stay put.
Well, I was.
You have a report on the status of road projects and overlays.
I do. I'll be very brief because I know that we're about to be done. Alderman Perkins had asked me very specifically about the overlays and when those were expected to start. APAC has that bid and they are anticipated to start next week. They were finishing up a project in Lowndes County and they finished that up last week. They took this week off by plan. This is their apparently vacation week. And they are going to start on us next week. This week counts toward their contract time, which ends, I believe, approximately August the 2nd or 3rd. It's one of those days. So the time is still counting away as we go about it, but they don't seem to have any difficulty in thinking they'll be done. Where they're going to start is we are not sure, and it depends on their milling subcontractor. He may or may not be starting next week with them. If so, they probably will mill, and APAC will follow in behind them with the overlay. If not, they may just overlay to begin with, and I'm not sure where they'll start. That's going to be probably more to their idea of what they're going to do to expedite their work and be as efficient as they possibly can. But as soon as we know that, which will probably be the end of this week, we can email the board and let y'all know. So if your constituents are asking, or if they see something, y'all will be able to tell them that. The Garrett Road, Pat Station Road extension is currently in a penalty phase. They are in the damage phase. Their timeline of 78 days, I believe it was, ran out like June the 21st. So they are working. They have provided a timeline for their next elements of their project. June the 30th through June the 6th, they're pouring a concrete sidewalk. July the 5th, July the 7th, they're grading and installing topsoil. This is obviously weather dependent. So though I say these dates, it may not be that if we get some rain. They're going to install erosion control items on July the 8th. July the 7th through the 9th, they're going to fill pavement voids at inlets and clean the roadway for paving. July the 11th, install asphalt surface course and permanent signs, and then July the 22nd, install permanent pavement markings. So that's their schedule as it stands right now, and hopefully they'll be able to adhere to that and the weather will cooperate. Louisville Street widening project. We are relocating water lines that the city has in place. They're going to be doing that this week and next. I know that I saw Mr. Box out there with his crew this morning early, and they were looking at where the water lines were going to be going and what they were going to have to do to get that handled. Most of the encroachments have been moved from the rights-of-way, and we're working on getting plan approval from MDOT. Edward anticipates coming forward with authorization to advertise, but we don't anticipate construction until next year. And generally that means obviously the next construction season, although if they want to start pouring concrete in January, I guess they can. We're looking at probably 3 months for MDOT approval, but we anticipate that by the end of the year, and then we'll be going forward. So, does that answer all your questions?
That does all of
Okay,
it.
all
Thank
right.
you.
Do we have any further questions or comments from the members of the board?
As far as the Patentation Road extended, and, you know, we've got a chance of rain every day for the next 10 days, I saw today, but if they get held up, and is that just something they still
They're-
take that loss every day?
They're in the penalty phase, yes.
Okay.
Well, we certainly got their attention at the last meeting. Every tractor and piece of equipment was moving.
It is, and it's looking very good.
It's a nice looking road.
It
Yeah,
is.
it
Very
is.
good. Very nice looking road. Okay.
Are there any further questions or comments? Any further questions
One
or
last thing,
comments?
Ms. Brew, I like that language there that y'all have with this, you know, this liquidated damage,
Yes.
the lateness, that
Absolutely.
keeps them moving. You be sure to
Absolutely.
keep that in those contracts, that'll do it.
No question.
Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Brewer. And the next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims document.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself.
We'll give Alderman Carver a moment to exit the room. Discussion.
So moved.
Alderman Vaughn has made a motion to approve of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims docket as of June 30th, 2011. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Could someone go and tap Alderman Carver? If I'm not mistaken, that exhausts the open session portion of our agenda. We do have several potential matters for discussion in executive session. A motion to move into a closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session would be in order.
So moved.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to go into closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll now clear the room for a closed session. And guys, without objection, I'm going to go into a quick recess.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.